Hello, welcome to our webinar all about customer feedback. It's called How to Make Your Customers Happy with Product Feedback. It's going to be given by Hannah, who is the CEO of Receptive. They help B2B SaaS companies deal with product feedback at scale so that they can make informed product decisions. And today I'm also going to be helping out. I am head of content. I wrote a book called Two Ears, One Mouth, which helps SaaS companies try and understand the importance of feedback and how it can help them grow. But this webinar isn't about the book. This webinar is about how customer success managers can use feedback to make their customers happy. We like our webinars to be, short and packed full of useful stuff. So you're going to learn about why feedback is important, why success teams are basically sandwiches, bear with us on that one, and how to create feedback links between success and product, both when you're starting off and also when you're scaling.
Cool, thanks Joe. So first off, I'm sure if you're in success, you'll understand the value of product feedback, the value it creates and what it means for your organisation. We're just going to give you a few minutes background on why you should care. Like I said, you probably already do care, but hopefully we'll empower you with some bits of information so you can make real positive changes in your organisation and get other people on board, particularly the product team, who are the people who often deal with product feedback from customers. And that's the real challenge for a lot of success teams, and the reason we've put this webinar together. You're the ones dealing with feedback on the front line, and we find there's often a process gap between collecting the information, getting it to the product team, and then being able to get status updates back to your customers as well. And this is especially important if you're in SaaS, because the customer holds more power than ever before. So remember, not many years ago, don't laugh at how old I am, Joe. Oh thanks, we'll be up until 2 a.m. shipping software on CD-ROMs.
Don't even know what a CD-ROM is.
Oh my goodness, don't. But now, even large enterprise companies are becoming more agile every day. And we've got this really cool situation where it's actually a lot easier to kind of gather and use feedback.
Look, so there's going to be some people that claim you shouldn't listen to your customers. We're not going to name any names, but I'm sure you've seen blog posts and stuff that headed towards that route. But they're wrong, because your customers want to help you. They want your product to work and for it to be as good as it possibly can be. These are the people who use your product day in and day out, so they know what works and what doesn't. It'd be silly not to listen to that sort of feedback. One of our major customers, they recently told us that they didn't like the design of the app. So rather than bury our heads in the sand, we listened and we made improvements. And so when we ended up using what they and other customers had told us, when we kicked off a planned UI project, so we were able to improve relationships and our product in one go. So the three big things you'll find if you start keeping your ears open are increased MRR, it's a hard one to say.
That is a hard one to say, yeah.
Decreased churn, and the creation of customer advocates. So that last one, that's important, because these customer advocates are going to help steer your product in the right direction, help other customers out, and maybe even put a good word in with prospects. So, you get quite a lot of benefits from those. It's also important to be proactive when it comes to customer feedback. Rather than waiting for customers to come to you with their feedback or contact you asking for updates, it is useful to reach out to them for the data you need and to regularly update them. A proactive success team can provide all sorts of useful data and insights, and then the product team can use that to guide their product development. Just because you have a roadmap doesn't mean you have to stick to it. The demand from customers and the pain points that they feel can also guide you, even if it means veering off your roadmap every now and then. When you're proactive, everything begins to fall into place and you can start to grow.
And there's actually a lot of real data to back this up now. This is Patrick from Price Intelligently. We both spoke at the SaaS.com conference in Dublin back in September. Brilliant conference, by the way, for anyone in Europe in SaaS. And every year their company releases a state of SaaS report, and it's a great read. So if you have a look at the bottom right there, you can see that a lot of SaaS companies are really falling behind on customer development. So when it comes to conversations with customers about how you can work better with them, how you can improve your product, actually less than 10 conversations like that happen every month within a lot of SaaS companies. And this data is actually taken from over 1,600 different businesses. Now, if anyone's been on a webinar before or seen us talk at any events, when we really don't like text on slides, but I've made the exception for Patrick here. It makes a really great point. So basically, not so long ago, most SaaS companies, a lot didn't exist for a start, still a relatively young market, and all these SaaS products started coming out, and they looked brilliant against these big old platforms, on-premise stuff that came before. But now it's very different. The companies that are doing the work to know customers are really winning. There's actually a real tangible growth gap appearing between the companies who seek to engage customers when it comes to product development and those who don't.
So that brings us to the end of the first part of this webinar. So I'm just going to recap for you. If you don't take customer feedback seriously, you're going to fall behind. The SaaS organizations who focus on retaining customers and not just acquiring new ones end up winning in the long term. Feedback represents a huge opportunity for software companies, and the data that customers give you is invaluable to the organization as a whole, and especially to the product team. For the second part then, we're going to move on to where we see the challenges and all the pain points in success teams when it comes to feedback. It seems to be quite a common occurrence that product teams don't like to take an interest in feedback. They know where they want the product to go, and they're not going to listen to anything else. Data ends up being spread around the organization in spreadsheets, in Trello boards, in emails, and there's no way of bringing it together and analyzing it thoroughly. And sometimes you just can't handle the feedback that you've got. Your hands are full, you're juggling endless requests, and if one more customer asks for something, you're probably going to scream. So they're just some of the pain points that people like you are likely to have. If you do have any others, please, we'd like to hear them, wouldn't we?
Yeah, definitely.
We'll pop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll have a look at the end and maybe discuss those. Okay, right, yeah.
Sandwiches.
This is the controversial one. So everyone likes sandwiches. That's not controversial. That's the non-controversial bit.
Or is it, Joe?
But what isn't so tasty is a customer success sandwich. And that's what these pains can add up to. Success is often stuck between the product team, so that's one slice of bread, and their customers, that's the other. I mean, it's a pretty awful analogy, but it is an analogy.
It works.
So, at least it makes a bit of sense. Success on the front line, dealing with feedback on a daily basis. You need to create an amazing experience for your customers, and also need to keep the product team happy. And so it's hard to balance between both of those.
Carrying on with the sandwich theme.
Of course.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, why not?
It is dinner time after all. So let's have a look at the product team. So these are real quotes from real product managers that we've heard over the years. So first off, on the left, customer requests spread around the organisation. We're making product decisions on who is the loudest and what's freshest on our mind. Customer success teams members popping their head around. This isn't your fault, by the way, customer success folks. Popping your head around the door to find the status of a request they've never heard of, which can cause a lot of tension and politics. And then product team are finding in spreadsheets, just trying to make sense of customer feedback. So there's a huge opportunity here for success to step in and make this a little bit of process work really well for the whole company. On the other side,
you love that sandwich, don't you?
I love the sandwich. We've obviously got customers. Now, the key thing here, it's not just about making customers happy, because often in B2B SaaS, your customer is a whole organization, right? It's a whole company. And experience is everything to them. I don't know why that man has an animal tail.
I've seen this a lot of times and I still can't figure it out. It still shocks me every time.
So feedback is really important, because it's not just what your customers have to say, it's the experience you give them when they contact you with an improvement. If you create a good experience with that little bit of process and handle feedback well, that goes a really long way. And you'll find that the most vocal customers, the one who tell you what's crap and what doesn't work for them, they're the people who really, really care. So like I said, a bit simple process, which we're about to go through in the next section, can get your product team on board. It can help you communicate to customers, and the results are actually huge. So this is Lisa, our VP, who we gave a little shout out to at the beginning, Ali, runs a popular customer success podcast called Churn It Up. Great title. And she really summed this up. So we worked with them to put this little 3-step process in place we'll go over. And they found that having this direct channel between customers and the product team removed the need to manage expectations. So, customer success was no longer, sandwiched in the middle of all of that.
Sandwiches again.
Sandwiches. I think we've made the sandwich point really well.
So to summarize that part then, you need to recognize when you need to scale your product feedback process. Product feedback is about customer experience, and a little process can go a long way, as you're about to find out.
I feel like it should be a drum roll or something.
Do you want to do one?
That was quite cheerful.
It sounded awful to them, didn't it? So part 3. Hopefully we've explained the huge opportunity that success teams have in playing a crucial role in helping a SaaS company to grow. And that, that involves taking a proactive approach to product feedback and understanding those pain points that we've just spoken about. But I suppose now it falls upon us to explain how to actually fix them. So there are 3 simple steps that will help you switch from a passive approach to a proactive approach to customer feedback. That's really satisfying, isn't it? To a proactive approach to customer feedback. Step 1, get everyone aligned and on board. There's no use really plowing ahead with this if people aren't going to do it or do it half-heartedly. You've got to be all in or nothing. So first up, try running a meeting with your product team. Get the conversation started with some of these questions. In an ideal world, how would customer feedback be presented to them? What are your biggest pain points around how customer feedback is handled right now? How would an improved process support your business goals? And what commercial difference would an improved process have to revenue and churn and other metrics that are important to you?
So I'm going to go into a little more detail on that, and don't worry about noting it all down because we'll pop all this over into the resources.
Yeah, making it very easy for them.
I'm making it easy for
everyone. Not making them work, are you?
No.
I'm maybe listening to us is work. Maybe that's.
So basically, is a bit more food for thought on questions to think about. So in the success team, you'll be getting feedback, but very often it's unstructured. So if you put a little bit of structure around that and make sure you're always asking the right questions, the sort of questions that mean you're getting great information for your product team, then it can be just remove a load of steps in the whole process. Good examples of that are asking the customer, when they give you some feedback or a feature request, what are you trying to achieve? Get to the bottom of the pain point. Do you currently have a workaround? And how often do you need this, and what's the impact? Sort of questions like that. The other thing that's a really great idea is, if I may say so myself, is
you are going to. So.
I'm going to collect a little bit of context for your product team as well. Not all customer feedback is equal. You should take all feedback seriously, but you'll need to listen to different voices at different times. So if you collect the MRR, the location, job role priority, the things that matter to your business, work that through with the product team. And then when they've got that feedback, they have an unfiltered view of the customer voice and some really nice extra bits of information so they know who they're listening to. Got some examples of that as well. So these are some great examples from customers actually with obviously sensitive information removed. So you can see here we've got things like when a customer submits a request, they want to know what they want, the reason why, the workaround, and the possible solution. And just to give you an idea of how different this can be between organizations, there's another here. This company like to focus on the feature request, so they want a detailed description, and they also want to understand how that request would improve the workflow of a customer. That just gives you an idea of the kind of bespoke nature of this. Got my piece of paper stuck. That's not good. So the reason all this really matters is it's your opportunity as the success team to give product that voice of the customer, as I said, because they want to get their hands on this information so that they are in power to design the right solutions for your users. And if you think back to the slide with the quotes from product managers, there is a frustration in not having the data there, and that's where you can help them. You can inspire them with this information, really get them on board.
Okay, so step 2, you need to centralize your product feedback into one place. So here's quite a big list of benefits.
You can read it later, don't
yeah,
worry.
I'm not going to bore you and read through all of those. But this is what happens when you manage demand from your customers well. If you do it passively, then it's not going to happen. Instead, you need to create a separate channel of feedback. So support, success, silent customers, loud customers, and of course product can all have an input.
So here's some things we recommend for like centralizing customer feedback. Remember, thinking back, if you've got customer feedback, at the minute, it probably, it could go in emails, in your support channel, all over the place. Get it centralized so you can use it. So the answer to what works for you depends on the size. There's tools like Zapier that automate passing information between various bits of software. And if you're a smaller company, you can use Trello or an existing ticketing system. And they're all great at what they do. They're not specifically for managing customer feedback. We'll get on a bit later to the things to look for, at the point you need to scale this. So for example, once you hit a few hundred requests in Trello, you end up in a massive backlog of stale data, but it can be great for, when you're starting out. So if you're scaling, if you're an enterprise organization, you need to put something serious in place that covers all the processes as well. So obviously you can use, that's what we do here at Receptive. Step 3 then, so just thinking back, a quick recap on them. Step 1, get the right people on board, probably a product team, well, definitely a product team.
It'd help.
Yeah, it would help. Secondly, get all that data centralized. And then if you do that, you can get good updates from the product team and make sure you remove the black hole of customer feedback, which I will let you explain.
Yeah. I mean, one of the few things I know in terms of astrophysics is that black holes are pretty terrifying. The reason they're black, if you're interested, is because the light basically can't escape back to our eyes. So obviously it looks black. If light can't escape, then feedback has no chance. If you don't update your customers about the decisions you've made on their request, then it's like they've been talking to a brick wall, and we all know how that makes us feel. But take the time to communicate with them and keep them in the loop, and they'll be happy, even if, and this is important, even if the answer is no.
Yeah, absolutely. So we automate all of this stuff. So we have a load of saved responses. So when we receive feedback from customers, we can see all the customers that are also interested in that piece of feedback, how important it is to them. And then we've got saved responses that go out to update the customers at every step of the way. Another example we've got here is Gorgeous, which is, I think that's how I pronounce it, Gorgeous?
I think it was named after me. I think.
Oh my goodness. That's worse than the sandwich. But this is a really neat browser plugin, and you can create templates that you can share across your success team. And by doing that, it makes sure that the responses you're giving back to customers on the status of feedback are consistent and well written. And then you don't have to think back to this slide.
Tailman's back.
So if you think back to this slide, although you don't, because I've managed to put two and remembered that. The simple idea of communicating back to customers is where you create a great experience and get rid of that black hole of feedback. If you've got your product team on board and your feedback data in one place, it empowers you as success people to be proactive. Instead of generic and evasive responses when customers make requests, you can check if the requests are on the roadmap as a problem to solve. And if not, you can share best practices and workarounds and just add value to that interaction with the customer. And just remember, every request is an opportunity to tell a great story. I scribbled a little quote down here actually from Ali. She said, "You need to know your customers better than they know themselves." That's one she says from Lincoln Murphy. I'm sure you're familiar with him. So an example of that is if you get a feature request in that you're just never going to build, just explaining why goes a really, really long way. Really embrace these discussions because they're actually great moments. And the other thing to be aware of as well when it comes to product team is know the answers to these questions. These will help you give good responses to customers. Know how often they're going to review the kind of little store of product feedback you've got now it's centralized. And then also understand from the product team, how customer feedback, how does that actually fit into decisions? You're in a much better state if you can go back to a customer and say it's reviewed every fortnight, or with one of our customers has a feedback Friday where success and product get together and look at the receptive reports and see what's coming from customers. So just knowing that information empowers you to kind of act well when it comes to customer feedback. So finally, another thing to think about with product team is a high level roadmap. This is probably quite a touchy subject in some organisations, but I think having just a broad idea of what's coming up is a huge advantage when you're setting customer expectations. So we've got a little example on the screen here. People do roadmaps in all different ways. We've got like things under development, midterm, long term, and that's just a really nice reference point for success teams. If you can go in and quickly see when a particular problem set or a UI project's going to be addressed, you can feed back to the customer. So it's a really nice thing to have on hand. So to wrap up, we're just going to run through a couple of top tips for feedback at scale, because that's really our speciality, I guess. So Joe, I'll hand this one over to you.
Yeah, we keep mentioning Ali quite a lot. I
did explain who she was.
Yeah, I think she just likes the limelight, doesn't she? So Ali spoke recently on her podcast with Lisa Starita, who was the former head of success at Beekeeper, and Lisa explained the point at which she knew something was up and they needed to start scaling their process. So there's sort of 4 key things. First one, if you can't handle the feedback that you have. Hannah keeps doing weird thumbs up, it's really off-putting, sorry. Or if feedback slips through the cracks, feedback going into the scary black holes, or managing feedback has become a bit of a full-time job. If any of those things applies to you, then it's probably time to start thinking about scaling the process up. If you don't scale, then your data is stale. Scale up, fill your cup. There you go.
I think you're trying to rhyme or something.
That's some poetry for you there.
That's terrible.
I'll do some signed versions of that.
Please don't. So another thing to bear in mind at scale is when you've reached the point where you're hundreds of employees and you've got hundreds and thousands of users, going out and talking to every customer. I mean, I used to do that when we started this company. You knew every customer, you knew the names of the kids and the dogs, and you reach a point at scale where that is impossible. So when it comes to feedback, having a separate channel is vital. It reduces survey fatigue, it fills that huge gap you have of NPS, you reach more customers, actually reduces support tickets massively. And if you've got a system that's available on demand, customers can go in, give you feedback, change their mind, and that makes it a really, really easy way to stand out as a SaaS company.
Yeah, speaking of survey fatigue, actually, I really hate it when a company asks me.
You get quite angry.
Yeah, every now and then, when a company asks me to provide feedback, it's just, they might send across an NPS survey or one of those things where it's like a, thumbs up or thumbs down, like for instance, sort of like Gladiator Coliseum.
It's quite dark.
Yeah, well, that's their fault, not mine. They're the ones with the thumbs. It shows me that they don't really care about me. I'm just another number to them, and I can't help but wonder how much they're getting out of that data. So if you've said this, haven't you? If you
just having that separate channel.
Separate channel, and it creates an ongoing dialogue.
So I've got a few examples I picked out as well from people who do this well. These are from real SaaS companies. Some people have suggest feature as a button if it's feature request they're after. They can request feedback in different ways. You can drop this into your Salesforce experience, or have a link available like within your product. So at the moment that your customer has a piece of feedback, they can just go ahead and submit it. There's no barriers or blockers. What that actually does is it mobilizes a huge amount of your customer base. You'll have loads of silent customers that either feel their issues aren't important enough or a bug as such, so they won't contact support. Or when someone from success does reach out, they tend to talk about the big picture things. So it's a really great way at scale to get this feedback in. Because like I said earlier, the people who, if you're getting feedback in, people really care about your product, which is a great sign. So this graph is real customer data taken from one of our case studies. And, this isn't a one-off, it's typical trends that we see when companies open a feedback channel for the customers. So the little kind of orangey bar, I hope you can see this all right on the screen, that's new requests, new feedback coming in. The purple, blue and light orange, yellow bar, above, like graph line above that.
I would have said the other one's red.
Would you have said red?
Confusion, yeah.
Oh, I've probably got problems with colours. But that's all customer data. That's customers logging in and they're looking at your roadmap. If you've got a roadmap available, they're looking at the status of requests, they're self-serving on that, and they're prioritising things for you. And you're getting all of that customer interaction and data by doing essentially, nothing. That's not an interaction with your company. That's, well, it is, but without going through the success team. So again, it's huge data set. And then to finish off, one thing that worries people a lot is that they think collecting customer feedback at scale is dangerous because they'll have too many things to build and that will lead to bad customer expectations.
So this is some concept art for the latest Tesla car. No, it's not. It's
really, Joe.
I know that I probably convinced most of you there, but this is a car that Homer designed in an episode of The Simpsons, and he wanted to make a car that made everyone happy and had every feature possible. And it is The Simpsons, so it failed pretty spectacularly. So your aim here is not to do a Homer and not to build everything that customers ask for. It can be scary saying no to a customer. But it's even scarier to be confronted with large-scale churn just because you said yes to everything and then couldn't deliver on it all. So you have to learn to say no, and more importantly, you have to explain why you're saying no. Because if you do that, your customers are going to accept that you have a valid reason, so they won't feel ignored, but also they'll understand where you're coming from. So that means they'll feel content to keep using your product, and hopefully will then provide more ideas in the future. And then some of those maybe you do want to build, so you still get something out of it, and the customer's happy.
Again, thinking back to that slide earlier.
Yeah, there it is again.
A huge part of saying no, as Joe said, is ensuring that you've collected the information you need from your customers when they give feedback, and then you can pick and choose that data when you need it. So if you're collecting the right information, your product team can do two things, which has a big impact on your whole company.
Ooh.
The whole company. I'm not even exaggerating.
Try another drum roll.
I need another drum roll for that, Joe. Thank you. So doing this, it brings the voice of the right customers to enhance what's already on your roadmap. And that's a great point to sell the product team on. If you understand which feedback has come from big customers versus small, for example, or which feedbacks come from free trialers versus paying customers, the product team can use that context to make great decisions. Another example is, if you've got a design project on your roadmap to enhance the UI for enterprise customers, then you'd want your product team to be able to look at the feedback that has come from your paying enterprise customers. People who are on free trial with your product, if you happen to have one, will have a completely different experience of your product. So their feedback isn't kind of relevant at that particular time. And secondly, it's the same approach for road mapping in the future as well. If you as the success teams are collecting good data with the context added to it, the product team can use the information with confidence when they're planning the next quarter or whatever time frame you use it in your company. And you can't do that if you don't follow those 3 points we've said. If you get your product team on board, if your feedback's spread all over the place and you're not communicating back to your customers, you can't use the information. So if you're a receptive customer, that's all in reports section. You can easily
big up receptive customers.
Yeah, you can just click in the prepared reports to see what the high value customers versus lower free trialers are after. If you're stuck on any of that at all, or if you'd like explained a bit more detail, drop us an email. So in summary, slicing and dicing the data is key to customer feedback at scale. You'll have so many different voices from so many people. You need to collect it, but understand that the feedback that's relevant to you today won't be what matters tomorrow, but that's how it should be. If you're evolving your product, you'll have different projects on the go. And like I keep saying, get your feedback in one place because that allows you to pick and choose the data that you need.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the final part of the webinar. So to summarize, finally, you need to agree a process internally and make sure everyone's aligned, especially the product team. You need to capture all your product feedback in one place. You need to know how the product teams are going to review and use the data, and then that allows you to know what you're going to collect. And finally, you need to make sure you're communicating back to the customers and avoiding those sneaky black holes.
Exactly. So we've got a load of really cool resources to help you out. We're going to send some over that are specific to the webinar. I've got separate ones for customers versus people who aren't familiar with Receptive. And we've got the slide deck as well. But we've also got loads of customer success resources, from the book that Joe wrote, to like podcasts, to blog posts, loads of other webinars. It's a feast of content. And we've actually got a whole section dedicated to this issue at scale as well, which we kicked off a couple of months ago. So that's everything. Thank you for listening. We hope you've learned at least something you can take away today. You know, get in touch with any questions at all. We're always happy to help, and we love talking about this topic, as you can tell. Have we got any questions in, Joe?
We've had a couple in before we even started.
Did we?
Yeah, which is.
I didn't know that. Did you keep those secret from
I kept those to myself. I'll put you on the spot.
Thanks for not giving me a heads up, Joe.
First up, what's your favourite sandwich? No, I'm joking. It's not. What size should I be to scale this process? I think they're wanting, you know, more of a almost number rather than what we said, but I don't know whether that's possible.
An interesting one. I would say go back to those pain points that we talked through.
Yeah.
I don't think you can put a hard
I think some companies it'll be 10 employees, some it'll be 100. You know, it's not, and you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to put an actual value on it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely going back to those four.
I feel like that's a non-answer, but it'll do.
I don't think it's a non-answer.
I'm not going to push you for a number, Hannah. Don't worry.
I would summarise it with, there isn't a hard like customer or employee number. It's definitely the point at which you feel like you want more customer feedback.
Yeah, it's like a gut feeling.
Don't say that word. You can't handle what you've got. So yeah, refer back to those 4 points.
Okay, you'll love this second one. How would you deal with a difficult product manager? Difficult in inverted commas.
That is a tricky one. We had a similar question actually come up on the last webinar. I think I gave quite a balanced answer.
I think you should just dig the knife in now.
I think I found, well, it's like anything, isn't it? Everyone's different, but you need to sell the benefits to the product team. If there's a particular person who's difficult, it will be for a reason. So you should respect that. You should go and talk to them and find out why, and address the concerns outside of a bigger meeting about this issue. Yeah,
focus on tangible stuff, I'd say. Like, you know, they want facts and figures, so to speak. They don't want
fluffy.
Yeah.
They need to see the benefit for them. And that's where this
whole process will help.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, there's quite a lot to take away from the webinar on that to get people on board, but whoever sent that in, if it's a specific situation, you know, it's hard to comment without a bit more context.
Yeah, what's the gossip? That's what we want.
We need the gossip.
What's the goss?
Hope that helps a little. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
Was that everything?
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we'll send everything over to you all tomorrow.